You cannot believe what this girl has done to rescue the elephant herd in Thailand. Supaporn grew up in rural Kanchanaburi, where giant elephants are not only cultural symbols, but also companions in everyday life. From a young age, she was passionate about these animals, captivated by the gentleness hidden behind their enormous size. But one day, she happened to see an old abandoned elephant, its sad eyes seeming to plead for help, and that moment sparked a fire in her heart. Supaporn decided to become a veterinarian, not just to care for them, but to protect these creatures who cannot speak for themselves. Her journey was a long series of challenges, from teaching herself English to access modern knowledge, to facing ruthless poachers. With love and perseverance, Supaporn not only saved the elephants but also ignited hope for an entire generation. Can she overcome everything to turn her dream into reality? Subscribe to the Animal Kisa channel to follow Supaporn's inspiring journey and explore other wildlife conservation stories. Together, we can support efforts to protect elephants and spread the message of love for animals. Wishing you meaningful moments while watching the channel. Supaporn grew up in a remote rural area of Thailand, where elephants are not just cultural symbols, but also a part of daily life. From childhood, she adored these giant elephants with their gentle eyes and slow steps. But everything changed when she witnessed an old elephant tightly chained, its legs covered in wounds, forced to carry tourists under the scorching sun. Its faint moans echoed in her mind, stirring a mix of helplessness and anger. That very moment planted a dream in Supaporn's heart, to become a veterinarian to care for and protect elephants from abuse. That dream was not just a fleeting idea, it became a burning flame, pushing her to overcome every hardship. Supaporn understood that to achieve her goal, she needed deep knowledge and practical skills. She began imagining herself standing in a laboratory, researching treatments for elephants, or in a field helping an injured elephant recover. That resolve made her willing to sacrifice her time, effort, and even her own comfort to make her dream come true. When she started learning about veterinary science, Supaporn quickly faced a harsh truth. Most scientific documents, textbooks, and advanced research were written in English. With the little English she had learned at her village school, she felt like she was standing before a towering wall. Once she tried reading an article about elephant diseases, but words like inflammation and rehabilitation overwhelmed her. She realized that without mastering English, her dream would forever remain a far-off fantasy. Undeterred, Supaporn decided to turn English into the key to unlock the door of knowledge. She began teaching herself, even though it meant spending hours after exhausting workdays looking up words in a dictionary, listening to online conversations, and practicing pronunciation one word at a time. English was not just a tool, it was a bridge bringing her closer to the vast world of modern science and technology. With every new word she learned, she felt herself moving one step closer to a deeper understanding of veterinary science. To make her dream a reality, Supaporn left her hometown and moved to Pattaya, a bustling coastal tourist city. There, she worked at a resort where crowds of foreign visitors arrived daily. Her job involved serving, guiding, and sometimes caring for the elephants that served the tourists. Though she loved being near the elephants, she couldn't help but feel pained seeing them overexploited. This only reinforced her determination. Life in Pattaya was far from easy. Supaporn's work schedule stretched from early morning to late at night, with peak days leaving her almost no time to rest. Her small salary from the job only covered living expenses and a portion of her tuition, forcing her to live frugally down to every baht. Financial pressure weighed heavily, but Supaporn refused to let it shake her will. Each night, returning to her cramped rented room, she turned on an old desk lamp and kept studying English, even as her eyes stung from exhaustion. Gradually, Supaporn's persistence began to bear fruit. She not only improved her ability to communicate with tourists, but also started understanding basic veterinary documents in English. Pattaya, with all its noise and harshness, became a place that tested and forged her. In Supaporn's heart, every difficulty was a brick paving the path to her great dream. One day, she would stand up for the elephants she loved, no longer a helpless girl but someone capable of changing their lives. Supaporn was born and raised in a small village in rural Thailand, where tradition and stability are always prioritized. For the people here, pursuing personal dreams, especially a far-fetched one like becoming a veterinarian, is often seen as impractical. They believe that a simple life, farming, selling at the market, or working in nearby tourist areas, is the right path. Supaporn's family, though they love her dearly, shares this mindset. Her mother frequently advises her, "Why study so much, dear? Find a stable job, earn money to help the family. That's enough." These words, though spoken out of concern, unintentionally become a burden weighing on Supaporn's slender shoulders. She felt out of place even in her own home. Every time she excitedly talked about her dream of caring for and protecting elephants, she was met with head shakes and pitying looks from her parents and neighbors. "A veterinarian? What for? The elephants here are doing just fine," an uncle said mockingly. They didn't understand that Supaporn had seen elephants tightly chained, beaten, and exploited to exhaustion in the tourism industry. She wanted to explain, to tell them about the pain she felt, but it seemed no one would listen. The societal pressure made her start doubting herself. Was her dream truly worth pursuing? When Supaporn started working at a tourist resort in Pattaya, to earn money for her tuition, she hoped to be close to and care for the elephants she loved. But reality was harsher than she had imagined. She witnessed firsthand how elephants were forced to perform meaningless tricks to entertain tourists. Riding bicycles, painting pictures, or lifting people with their trunks. When they didn't obey, the mahouts wouldn't hesitate to stab their ears or backs with sharp iron hooks. Once, Supaporn stood frozen as she watched an old elephant groan in pain, blood streaming from a wound on its head, just because it walked slowly. The animal's cries pierced her heart, but she could do nothing but stand there helplessly. That feeling of helplessness became Supaporn's daily companion. She realized that to become a veterinarian, she needed not only knowledge but also to confront a system of animal exploitation deeply rooted in the local tourism culture. She wondered if she had the strength to change this harsh reality, or if she was just a dreamer in a world that refused to change. After years of study and gaining experience, Supaporn decided to realize her biggest dream, building an elephant conservation center. She envisioned it as a safe haven for abused elephants, where they could live freely and receive proper care. But as she began, she quickly hit a massive wall of administrative barriers. Getting permits from the local authorities was a nightmare. Endless complicated procedures, unclear requirements, and the indifferent attitude of officials left her exhausted. And that wasn't all. Finances were another major obstacle. Supaporn didn't have enough money to buy land, build facilities, or hire staff. She sent dozens of letters seeking funding to international conservation organizations, but most rejected her, saying her project was too ambitious or not feasible. One afternoon, after receiving her 10th rejection letter, Supaporn sat dazed in her small room, clutching the crumpled paper, tears silently streaming down her face. She felt as if the whole world had turned its back on her. One day, news spread. Throughout the region, a herd of wild elephants was being threatened by poaching. Ruthless poachers were targeting their tusks, ready to kill any elephant for profit. Supaporn's heart tightened when she heard this. She knew she couldn't stand by. With burning determination, she gathered a group of volunteers and led the effort to save the elephants from extinction. This was the greatest challenge of her life, not only because of the lurking danger, but also because time was running out. Supaporn's team had to trek through dense forests, facing rugged terrain and harsh weather. Every step was a gamble with fate, but she didn't flinch. She knew that if she didn't act now, the elephants she loved would disappear from the world forever. The pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders, but the fire in her heart burned bright, pushing her forward. While searching for the herd, Supaporn and her team discovered a female elephant severely injured by a hunter's trap. Blood poured from a deep wound on its leg, and its breath was so faint it seemed on the verge of stopping. Supaporn immediately realized that without emergency surgery, the elephant wouldn't survive. This was the moment she had prepared for all these years, but it was also the greatest test of her courage and skills. With rudimentary medical equipment and poor conditions deep in the forest, Supaporn had to perform the surgery on the spot. The worried eyes of the volunteers were fixed on her, and her heart pounded as if it might burst. But she didn't let fear take over. With trembling but determined hands, she began the task, cleaning the wound, stitching each suture, and trying to stabilize the elephant. Every minute was a battle between life and death, and sweat soaked her face. After hours of tension as dawn broke through the trees, the elephant finally began to breathe steadily again. Supaporn sat down beside it, gently stroking its trunk, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. In that moment, she realized she had surpassed her own limits. The dream once dismissed as far-fetched had now become reality, and she knew she could change the fate of the creatures she loved with her own hands and heart. Supaporn knelt beside the injured elephant in the dark forest, the light from the small flashlight on her forehead shining on its thick, wrinkled skin. Her hands trembled slightly as she carefully cleaned the deep wound on the animal's leg, blood still dripping out drop by drop. The elephant's heavy breathing mixed with the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves, creating a tense atmosphere. She had given it a sedative, but she knew time was running out. While inspecting the wound, her fingers accidentally touched a strange, hard object sticking out from the nearby skin. Frowning, she used tweezers to pull out a small metal piece, an electronic chip. That night, at a makeshift camp in the forest, Supaporn sat under the faint glow of an oil lamp, holding the chip and examining it closely. It had an unfamiliar symbol carved on it, resembling a snarling eagle with tiny letters below. She opened her old laptop, connected to a weak internet signal, and searched for information. The results shocked her. The symbol belonged to a notorious international animal trafficking organization that supplied rare wildlife to black markets worldwide. Her heart pounded. The poachers she had thought were just local criminals were actually pawns in a much bigger game. Her fight was no longer just about saving a few elephants in the area. Now she was facing a transnational criminal syndicate with resources and power far beyond what she could imagine. At the same time, in Pattaya, Krit, a tourism worker who had once mocked Supaporn's dreams, stood at a distance, watching her emerge from the forest. Her clothes were torn, her face covered in mud, but her eyes burned with a determination he had never seen in anyone. Krit had once thought she was foolish, a young girl with unrealistic dreams of changing the world. But now, seeing her risk her life to save the elephant, he felt ashamed of his earlier taunts. He approached her, his voice hesitant. "Supaporn, I saw what you did in the forest. I never thought you were this serious. I want to help. If you need anything, just tell me." Supaporn looked up at him, surprised. Krit had been one of her loudest critics, calling her a disruptor of the tourism industry. But now, his gaze was sincere, and she knew he wasn't lying. "Thank you, Krit," she replied, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "I need all the help I can get. This fight is much bigger than I thought." As Supaporn began gathering evidence about the animal trafficking organization, difficulties quickly piled up. The first conflict came from the society around her. Rumors spread through the village like a storm. Supaporn was a troublemaker, a threat to everyone's livelihood because she dared to challenge the tourism industry, the region's main source of income. The local people, once friendly, now looked at her with suspicion and distance. Her family was no exception. "You should find a stable job, Supaporn," her father sighed one evening. "If you keep taking risks like this, you'll bring trouble on yourself. Who will take care of you if something happens?" Her mother wept, begging her to give up this unrealistic dream. The pressure from her loved ones weighed heavily on her heart, but she couldn't stop. The second conflict was the harsh reality of how elephants were exploited in the tourism industry. One day, passing by a nearby elephant camp, Supaporn saw elephants tightly chained, their eyes dull with exhaustion after hours of carrying tourists under the scorching sun. The mahouts used sharp sticks to prod them into moving, ignoring their bleeding wounds. She had thought she understood this cruelty, but seeing it firsthand still left her feeling helpless and pained. How could she change an entire system so deeply rooted in the local economy? How could she save all these elephants when her resources were like a grain of sand in the desert? Finally, administrative barriers became a massive wall in her path. Supaporn started planning to build an elephant conservation center, but every step was a struggle. Her permit applications were rejected repeatedly without clear reasons. Meetings with local officials brought only empty promises and indifference. Once she overheard two administrative staff talking. "Don't let her get through. Someone higher up doesn't want this center to exist." Those words sent a chill through her. She suspected the trafficking organization had bribed officials to stop her, but she had no proof. One evening, as Supaporn sat in her small room holding the 10th rejection letter, Crit knocked and stepped inside. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a thick stack of documents. Inside were emails, invoices, and transaction records between local officials and the International Animal Trafficking Organization. "I had a friend in the tourism industry dig these up. It seems they don't want you to succeed." Supaporn flipped through the pages, her eyes lighting up as she realized this was the key to exposing the truth. But she also knew the danger was closer than ever. The people behind this organization wouldn't leave her alone if she dared to go public with these documents. Yet, instead of fear, she felt a fire of determination burning inside her. She had come too far to turn back. With Crit by her side and the truth in her hands, she was ready to face any challenge ahead. The elephants needed her, and she wouldn't abandon them, no matter the cost. Supaporn didn't just face dangers from poachers, she also found comfort in a special bond with Nong Ploy, a female elephant she had rescued during the poaching crisis. Nong Ploy had been badly injured, separated from her herd, and panicked, but with Supaporn's devoted care, she slowly recovered. Supaporn saw Nong Ploy as a close companion, someone who always listened to her on the hardest days. Every day she spent time sitting beside her, stroking her large trunk and talking about the pressures she faced. One afternoon, when all hope seemed lost after a funding application was rejected, Supaporn sat alone by a stream, tears falling silently. She wondered if she had the strength to go on. Suddenly Nong Ploy appeared, slowly walking toward her despite her weak legs. She gently touched Supaporn's hand with her trunk, her deep eyes glowing with gratitude and trust. That moment made Supaporn cry, not from despair but because she realized she wasn't alone. Nong Ploy's gaze gave her strength, reigniting her determination. She wiped her tears, hugged the trunk and whispered, "Thank you, Ploy. We'll get through this together." With motivation from Nong Ploy, Supaporn took action. She contacted international activists, using her experience from a trip to the US to convince them to help. Together they planned to dismantle the wildlife trafficking network. Supaporn risked her safety to gather evidence, from secretly recording footage to working with international police. In the end, the criminal network was broken, bringing a major victory for her and her team. Locally, she worked tirelessly to change the community's mindset by holding educational sessions and bringing children to meet Nong Ploy. Gradually, the people supported her, joining efforts to protect the elephants. With help from both international and local sources, Supaporn successfully built the Elephant Conservation Center. It was not just a safe haven for abused elephants, but also a symbol of harmony between humans and nature. Watching Nong Ploy roam freely, Supaporn smiled, knowing her efforts had paid off. Supaporn's story is a powerful example of how patience and compassion can change the fate of an entire species. From the early days of facing hardships, she never stopped working to build an elephant conservation center, a place where abused elephants could find freedom and love. Step by step, through countless struggles, Supaporn made her dream a reality, bringing hope not only to the elephants but also to those who believe in the power of kindness. Imagine a peaceful morning. Supaporn stands on a hill near the conservation center, her eyes on the herd of elephants roaming freely. The soft sunlight filters through the leaves, shining on the majestic creatures she has spent her life protecting. A smile spreads across her face, a smile full of pride and hope, proof that all her efforts have been rewarded. This story reminds us that with persistence and love, anyone can make a difference. If Supaporn's journey moves you, subscribe to the Animal Kisa channel to explore more meaningful wildlife stories. By joining, you help spread the message of nature conservation and support efforts like Supaporn's. Act today, subscribe to the channel, and join us in making a change.